This is Needham High School, where over 2,000 students, faculty, and staff spend the bulk of their week. There are thousands of other schools just like this one across the country that face most of the same issues that we face here. I spent the better part of the past year collecting the stories of individuals in this building, including administrators, counselors, teachers, and students. I set out to try and explore the environment that a place like this creates, as well as the impact that it has on the community. I put together my panel of guests to shed some light on what it's like in this place where we are expected to spend so much of our time.
Sure. My name is Aaron Seacott.
Allison Kubro Argentieri.
Yep, John Sherry.
Shannon Mastropolo.
Josh Tuttleman.
Sasha Svetlov.
Denise Domnarski.
My name is Seamus.
My name is Kelsey McCarthy.
My name is Matt Shafitz.
Jason Isaacs.
Jack Gordon.
My name is Dan Goodykanst.
Before we started to dig into the stressors and challenges that we face in high school, I wanted to first take a look at what we would hope an ideal or a positive environment would look like.
Thanks for sending the questions in advance too, because it's like, okay, and I'm still not sure I have a good answer for this.
It's a great question. Positive learning environment is really what we're striving for in every classroom, every period.
So, creating a positive learning environment is it's one of those things I feel like it is something that's difficult to discuss because a lot of it is just about who you are as a person.
It's an environment that is collaborative, that is safe, that is fun, enjoyable, and focused, productive.
They collaborate with each other. There's a sense of collaboration as well.
I think a positive environment is when students are collaborating with one another in small groups or in larger groups around projects or assessments.
Is figuring out what collaboration looks like, right? And not just my idea versus your idea, but trying to take our ideas and see if we can find something that is better.
A room where it's collaborative and the students put in their work, especially in group projects. They put in their work to maintain a healthy relationship between the group.
Positive learning environment to me is a collaborative environment, students working with each other.
Teachers and students are working together to achieve a goal, whether it's in the classroom or in another project related to school, even in some of our extracurriculars, in the arts and athletics or whatever that might be.
They are working together with their peers or with their teacher to achieve some objective in the classroom, some lesson.
One that students enjoy look forward to each day, enjoy being in when they're there, and one that ultimately is helping everybody, teacher included, grow, learn, progress with their own understanding of who they are and how they fit into the world.
A positive learning environment. Everyone communicating with each other, everyone getting along. The teacher treating all the students equally.
A class of students who are able to get along together despite the differences and despite perceived social culture at school, and a teacher who can also hop on that and support the students as an authority figure but also as a friend, and be able to kind of shape the curriculum and the way that we learn in the class to fit best to the different learning styles and abilities of the students.
To me, it's a classroom where everyone gets along. The teacher understands what the students are going through and can adjust the learning to help fit each student individually.
Is a supportive environment that students feel a sense of belonging, but also feel like they have the autonomy and independence to create their own experience here. That students feel supported by each other, that feel supported by the curriculum, and feel supported by their teachers and the faculty members that they interact with on a daily basis. That they make connections between what they're learning in the real world.
So I think that the beginning of a positive learning environment, at least in my experience as a teacher, is being a real person to my students, showing that I'm not perfect, that I don't expect that they are perfect, trying to be clear about what I'm expecting of them, and trying to demonstrate if things do come up and when they come up, because they always do, trying to demonstrate that I care about them and that it's not just about the bottom line of the grade book, but what can we figure out together, because we want, the overall goal is to get this done, or to learn, and knowing that people are coming at that goal from different places.
To me, it's a learning environment where the teacher is responsive and always talks to the students, and if they have trouble, helps them, walks them through their troubles.
And I think, more recently in my experiences here, I think things like creating those individual relationships with students, and knowing, this student really struggles with, maybe it's anxiety around presentations, and scheduling time to connect with that student and check in with them. How are you feeling about the presentation that's coming up? What can I do to help? Can we practice? And just offering extra support, so that they can, I really don't see it as changing the standard or the proficiency that you're asking students to meet. I think that remains for me pretty consistent, but it's more just understanding what might be the supports that a particular student needs in order to meet that challenge.
I try my best to have a good attitude, crack jokes once in a while, raise my hand when I actually know what I'm about to say, or try to take risks. And if we're doing a group activity and I see someone doesn't have a group, I definitely don't have a problem in asking them to come work with me, and also just having a good relationship with my teacher.
Is that I like to demonstrate making mistakes as well. And one of the first things I do in the beginning of the year is trying to learn your names faster than anybody else, and try and learn your name so I know you guys outside of the classroom. And when I make mistakes, oh yes, I feel uncomfortable, right? But okay, I'm over it, and I'm gonna move on, and I'll make the mistake again, but it's okay. And I try and sort of demonstrate that too. I think that's sort of top of mind at the moment.
Although it may not always seem like it, teachers and administrators want students to be happy when they're here. At its ideal, everyone wants a school or a classroom to be a place that is supportive and accepting of whoever you are, and everyone from administrators all the way down to students wants this to be a place that is collaborative. There are very few fields or careers that don't involve collaboration to at least a certain extent. A positive environment looks like a place where students and teachers are working together to learn or to achieve a goal, and students are working with each other to do the same. A positive environment should be a place where everyone feels safe, both physically safe and emotionally safe, in terms of they're comfortable enough with the people around them to make mistakes and to grow and to learn together. Once you create an environment where everyone is accepted and supported, that's when you can begin to collaborate and work together to learn. And that's the ideal, and regardless of the fact that we all want to achieve that, there are plenty of challenges that can get in the way.
I actually think the challenges being faced are fairly similar to those of teachers. The stuff that's coming at you right now is overwhelming. The list of things that you're thinking about as students, as people, just this stage in your life as people, including the aspects that we ask you to consider as students, the list is so long. I mean, the amount of information being produced is at such a pace that it's unheard of at any point in human history. And you're living in the midst of that. Someone in my age group, we at least have some perspective to recognize, wow, this is a lot. You've only known a lot throughout your lives as students. It's overwhelming. And it's all done in such a public way, you have no opportunity just to step back and say, I just need a little time to myself, because it's playing out in real time over social media and other aspects of your lives. It's overwhelming. I'm impressed on a daily basis that students are able to come in and smile and enjoy life and enjoy the interactions with others while all of this is going on. So I think the real challenge for students is just how much you're being asked by us, by your parents, by society to balance all at once and do it all with a smile on your face.
I think that peer pressure has always existed when I even think back to my own experience as a student. However, there is a piece that didn't exist when I was in school, and that's social media and technology, in the idea of social media being able to quickly communicate with each other. So I think that forum or that platform plays a really important role, because there is a constant compare. You can never, at the end of the school day, you can't walk away from the experience, because students are still communicating with each other through their devices. They're still posting on social media. something that might have happened, or they capture something. Whereas if something, for example, happened that day in a class and you just want to take a break from it, that the ability to do that can be a little more challenging when you're receiving texts about it or students have heard about it or posted about it. And so I think that I see a lot of value in social media and technology, but I also see that as an additional obstacle and hurdle that students have to deal with.
I would say the amount of homework and like all of the work together that we have to do and the expectations put on us by the school, our peers, and our parents.
I think one of the biggest challenges students face here at the high school is managing their time correctly, which coincides with class choice. I feel like a lot of kids focus on taking the best classes that they can because they think it'll improve their GPA and stuff. And by doing so, they take on more of a workload than they can deal with properly, which really stresses them out both in school and at home, takes away time in their life to do other things that they may enjoy, and just kind of is detrimental to their mental health.
I think feeding off each other's negativity is a huge thing that has popped up in the last few years. Just the idea of, oh, I'm so stressed, I have this, this, and this. Oh yeah, well, I'm so stressed because I have that, this, and the other thing. So it's competitive and it's academically competitive, but I don't think it's academically competitive in a healthy way. I think that students try to one-up each other with stress levels, and I think that is the biggest challenge, to say like, it's gonna be okay, like it's just one test, it's just one quiz. Oh, you've got 3 tests today, like let's talk about that, and maybe I can make arrangements and you could not take 3 in a row. Maybe you take a study break during my quiz if it's the 3rd one, and maybe we take it after school, or if you've got a study last block, like there are ways that we can work with that and trying to get people to understand what their stress levels are and find positive ways to manage that.
I think strangely, I think it depends on what class that I'm teaching, right? So I think about, I'll oversimplify it a little bit, but I'll think about like say an accelerated level physics class versus an honors or a CP level. I think in an accelerated physics class, I think one of the biggest challenges there is that students are drinking the grades matter Kool-Aid too much, okay? And I'm not saying they don't matter, I get it, they do, right? But not nearly as much as we all like to think they do, right? Or there's a system built around that really overvalues the grade, and what I mean by that, I think that gets in the way sometimes of students like really learning, and it gets in the way sometimes of teaching. And yes, I understand we need to assess, we need to be able to provide feedback and help you understand what you know and don't know so that you can grow. But I think in an accelerated class, overall, we drink the grades matter Kool-Aid just too much. I think in the positive though of drinking the grades matter Kool-Aid is it's a motivator. It's a reason to read the textbook. It's a reason to do some work on your own. It's a reason to put effort into class when you come in and you really don't feel like it, right? It's a reason. On the flip side, in some of my other classes that are not accelerated, right, my challenge is there, and I think students' challenges is finding a reason to put the work in. Right? You know what? I come in and I don't like physics, right? For whatever reason, maybe I don't know anything about it, but I've already decided I don't like physics, and so now I don't have a reason. And the grades, I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid. So now I don't have a real reason to put some work into figuring it out. And so I think kind of finding this motivation for students to like be curious, but to finding reasons to put some effort in to figuring things out. That's the biggest challenge, I think, as a student, as a teacher, as we as a community face.
I think it's a lot of how students see each other. Like both as people and as high school students, because obviously that's been deemed to be two separate things. But like, for example, we all know that in a high school, like in your stereotypical high school movie, there are like the social cliques and the social norms and stuff. And that could get in the way of having a good positive learning environment in a classroom. But and the only reason that social norms like that are created is because we give meaning to them when it's not something that is technically real. If you really think about it, like, we can all coincide and be friendly to each other, or at least try our best to. I think that gets in the way of it. And also having teachers who don't understand, I guess, like don't really see each of us as our own people, or as our own as our own people who have our own stories and our own lives behind us. And just the fact that we take that class, like, that's not, our lives shouldn't be circulated around that class, whether it's with work management or the amount of effort that we put into it. So that definitely gets in the way of it. Also, just what we learn a lot of the time, because I know personally I will definitely not put in as much effort into a project that I have absolutely no interest in than something that I have at least a little bit of my own say in, a little bit of my own creativity. And also creativity, if that's diminished in the classroom, it definitely lowers the vibrations down and it makes it kind of dull.
I think that one thing that can hinder me sometimes is when a teacher doesn't change or doesn't provide much variation to how they teach. For example, if they just lecture, and you just take notes and then you have a test on it, that really doesn't help me, just because, like, I'm fine with the learning aspect, I'm fine with the taking notes aspect, it just makes it not enjoyable.
Right, it's not fun to just sit there the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, more interactive stuff, more work that's kind of not just like lecturing at you, but actually discussing. I feel like, trying to work with you, trying to discuss about what you're learning, instead of just having information thrown at you and expected to memorize it.
I think the challenge of being a student is you're at the center, right? You might be the only, be unlikely, but you might be the only student in the high school who's enrolled in your same 7 classes, right? And so you as a student, part of your job, like the invisible part of your job, other than, like learning the stuff, becomes managing those 7 different environments. What are the expectations in those 7 different places, right? Some teachers have different procedures for the bathroom and all these, right? So like the actual day. And then on top of that, you've got the homework and, well, I have a test here and I have a paper here, and you're the manager, you're the common factor in those 7 different environments. And that's a big job. So I think that, keeping all of that together is something that is challenging. I think it's a good skill. I think that that's a good thing for students to learn and get an experience of. But I do think that that becomes challenging and overwhelming if you layer on top of it some of the pressure that students put on themselves, some of the pressure that they hear from other sources in their lives as well.
When we talk about challenges that students face in high school, the list just gets longer and longer. In a community like Needham that is academically focused, it creates an extreme pressure on students to succeed at the highest level possible. The hyper-focus on pushing yourself to the highest level classes that you may or may not be able to achieve, or just may not enjoy being in, ultimately leads to an increase in stress levels amongst the students. Then when you confine teachers to a curriculum or a list of things that they have to do, the bigger picture of why we're all here gets lost. Teachers are pressured by the curriculum and environment to get all the things that they have to do done, and sometimes they can forget that the 20-odd students sitting in front of them are more than just vessels for a ton of information, but people and individuals who have their own stories and passions in life. You have people in the building right now who feel like they are seen as nothing more than just a student, which takes away from the importance that a place like this holds. To create that ideal environment that we all want to have in school, you have to understand that every student is a person and an individual. You have to have some kind of variation to how you teach, and also you have to give them some choice in what they're learning so that they can have some stake in it, in what we're all trying to achieve here. the main people besides students that have to face these challenges are the teachers. And I think more often than not, the role of a teacher gets lost in the mountain of challenges working against them.
I think that a high school teacher is responsible for exposing students to a content area about which they are an expert and passionate, hopefully. And that's one part of their job, but I think that another part of their job is to connect with their students and to form kind of a little mini community in which their students can have can explore that content and decide whether this is something that they're interested in or not. And I would hope that students get sort of like a sampler platter, right, of all the different content areas that we offer at the high school, and get a sense of themselves through that. Like, this is an area of strength for me, or this is something I'm interested in, or this is something that I totally do not like. And I know for a fact that I'm not going to be doing this content when I move on to college or whatever comes next. So, but I think, like, in terms of big picture at the school, like, I think the heart of what happens in a school is the connections that are formed between students and each other in the classroom, but also between teachers and students. And so I think that's kind of the crux of it, is that relationship and that guidance of teacher to student, kind of helping them through the content.
I think the role of a high school teacher is not only to teach the students, which is obviously what they're here to do, but it's also to make sure they actually understand the material and actually know what the purpose of learning it is. Because I feel like a lot of the times when a student complains about a class, it's, oh, I'm so bored in this class, it has no real meaning for it, I don't actually need to use this. But I feel like if a teacher takes the time to not only explain, this is what we're learning, this is kind of like what you're going to get tested on, but they actually explain, this is where it comes from, why it's happening, and why it's important, then I feel like that just kind of helps students.
Coach. Yeah, and I think, and again, that's sort of where if we have that ability to kind of assess people individually, right, is that we can help them reach, find that sweet spot of stress and growth and stretch. But if we can't, then we're kind of teaching as a collective, right? And we're expecting everybody's at the same point. Some kids are coasting and some kids are too stretched too much. And we can't give that individual feedback. But I think the more we can wear a coach's hat, and yeah, we're providing instruction and providing content, but more of it's how to figure things out, and how to get better. And so if we can better assess where each individual is at, or groups of individuals, and then help them figure things out, then I think that's the optimum role of a teacher.
I guess it depends on the teachers. I've been pretty lucky with my teachers this year and my past years at the high school. I feel like teachers that I've been able to form kind of like a bond with over anything, has made it a lot easier for me to come and look forward to their class. Teachers that are able to not take themselves too seriously and not take the class too seriously, and kind of if students are having a conversation, if it's a side conversation, not diminish that, but maybe even kind of join in. If I'm walking in the hallway with a friend and I have my English teacher behind me and they hear I'm talking about another class, maybe join in if it's not weird, but having a bond with your students is mutually beneficial, and also it just makes seeing them and coming to that class a whole lot more fun.
I think I'm very, very fortunate where I have plenty of time to build strong relationships, and it's actually one of the things that we talk about in wellness, right? Teaching the whole person. So I get to spend a lot of time getting to know my students. One of the things that I do all the time is just greeting. That's a way that we start to kind of build a relationship, is kind of greeting each other every day, which is a small thing, but goes a long way.
I always try to go out of my way and say hi as well, just to everyone, which can be a lot of people with coaching and all the different classes that I teach. So I barely make it down a hallway without stopping to at least 2 or 3 people. But I think that continues to compound on everything I try to do in class too.
The ideal role of a teacher is someone who is an expert in the field that they're in, and also hopefully passionate about that field as well. The teacher also has to be able to form relationships with their students to foster the ideal learning environment that we all hope to have in school. That's not an easy thing to do by any means. It's not easy to come in every day and put the effort in to make classes fun or engaging, but it is so important to do. The teachers that I have been able to bond with and learn the most from are the ones who understood that there was more to me than just someone to be graded. And then they were also someone who showed me that they were someone who did more than just grade. We talked about what we hope an ideal learning environment looks like and what challenges we face in that. And we also talked about what roles we should ideally play while we're here. Now it's time to start talking about the effect that a place like this has on each of us.
So I know that we, from my experience, spend a lot of time thinking about the experience of our students and what that looks like. And what that looks like directly in the classroom, in individual classrooms by subject, what it looks like in the hallways in terms of how people are treating each other and things like that, what it looks like in terms of overall workload, preparing for next steps and post-secondary decisions and all of that. And there's still room for growth in that area because we still have data, both anecdotal and survey data, that says our students are still incredibly stressed out and experiencing stress and depression and anxiety at a high rate. It's not so different from other surrounding schools or schools across the nation, but it's significant.
And I'm going to step back and I'm going to presuppose stress comes into here somewhere, okay? And I want to talk a little bit about stress more largely, and then we can talk about where does it come from and workload and so forth. One of the things that I was having this conversation with my son, who's a senior up at UVM at fall, and I was bringing him home for Thanksgiving, and he was telling me that I was talking to him on the phone the week before, and he was feeling very stressed. And I was having a car ride. It's a 4-hour car ride with Dad, right, on the way back, and we were talking about that, and I was asking him why he felt so stressed, and he was having a hard time. Oh, I'm so busy. I got so much work and so forth. And the conversation that I was trying to have is that and I'm not sure how much of he got. I think so, but is that we feel stress when expectation, the gap between what's expected of us and what we think we can achieve, when it's a really big gap. So I'll say that again. So if there's a really large gap between what we perceive as expected of us and what we feel we can deliver, if that gap is too big, we feel a lot of stress. If that gap is too small, right, we maybe don't feel enough challenge or other things like that. But if that gap between what's expected of us and what we think we can deliver is just right,
the Goldilocks zone,
something like this, right? Then it's a good stress, right? And it's a healthy stress, right? And we're growing, we're challenged, and we're excited about all this because we're stretching and we're achieving, right?
There is an absolute investment in education really across the board, from the broader community to every parent and family member to the students who walk in the building, and of course the exceptional teaching staff and adult staff here. The drawback of that is there's a real expectation that people are on a particular path and are going to have a particular level of success on that path. So we tend to define, I think too often we let ourselves as a community define success in too narrow ways, so that students who are really well suited for a career in the military, or at least time in the military, get dissuaded from even seeing that as a viable option. Students who are ready to get out into a work environment and really use their hands and pursue a trade that's probably going to lead to a tremendous amount of success in every area, including financial, we tend to dissuade that happening and steer all kids toward a particular path. And it's not just steering them toward college, it's colleges that look great on a bumper sticker as you're driving around town. And I think we get way too caught up in finding the cool path and not the right path, or the path that looks attractive but doesn't necessarily match the individual student's needs and future goals. think if we did a better job of that, students would feel a little bit less stress.
So I think the environment in general it's not too great, it's not too bad, it's pretty neutral. There's nothing, like, the classrooms itself are fine, the school environment's fine. I know, like, students have a place to go to guidance if they need help. And I think overall the environment, they don't have, like, a place, a way to change your schedule. I feel like a way to change your schedule in the workload aspect, if you realize that you're taking too many hard classes or your workload's too much, they don't have an easy way to drop that if it's past like the first 2 weeks to a month of the school year. And I feel like if they kind of added that onto guidance, like time management help or workload help or a way to actually decrease it entirely, that would really be beneficial.
It could be mental effects.
You see, I take honors, so like I don't get like too much work. Like it's pretty reasonable. Like most of my teachers are pretty reasonable.
It depends on each person's schedule. I mean, for me, I have practice every day after school, and it's really hard to come home and sit down and do homework after that when I'm just exhausted. So I mean, some of it's just really hard to get done.
And do you think that's something that can be changed? Like, do you think that you could learn the same amount of material without homework?
I think I could learn almost the same amount. I mean, there are some homeworks that help, but most of them are just kind of just busy work.
So would you say essay or a long-term assignment is something that you could manage even with sports?
Yeah,
doing something like that.
Long-term assignments are easier to manage if you don't procrastinate. But I mean, you can find time to do them. But when you're assigned like a 2-hour thing in one night, it's hard to find the time to do it and do it well.
And do you think that in the classroom you're given a chance to say that? Do you think that your voice about your workload is included?
I don't think so in most of my classes.
And right now I know there are students all over this building who are laboring over the work they're doing because they want to get a certain grade. They're nervous and upset over test scores and quiz scores because they want to get a certain grade. As soon as we're talking about a grade, we're not talking about learning anymore. And the whole purpose of us being here is for those learning opportunities, not for those grading opportunities.
I mean, Mr. Sherry said it better than I ever could. We feel stressed when the gap between what is expected of us and what we believe we can achieve is too large. I mean, that's it right there. When students feel like there is too great of an expectation upon them, whether that comes from teachers or parents or even from each other, that's when the stress comes out. There are students all over the building that feel like when they have to get the best possible score on this assignment or test or it will ruin them. The stress of that has become a constant companion that we take into every classroom environment. Schools, this one in particular, need to do a better job of aligning their goals for their students with what the students feel they want to be able to do. If we take the time to create a more positive environment in the classroom and become more comfortable with each other, balancing the workload regardless of what class level you're in will become a lot easier, and we can begin to bring down some of those stress levels. Right now, there are students who don't feel accepted or supported in this place, and if that's the case, how could they possibly be expected to learn? Through all of the challenges and stress that go along with high school, there is still a lot that students and teachers alike can walk away with.
I want them to walk out having something that they've learned. Today, if I remember growing up, my parents always ask, what did you do at school today? Or how, not just how was school, they would ask more specific questions like, what did you do? What did you learn today? So I want my students to go home on a day-to-day basis and be able to answer that question. Oh, in math we did this theorem, or we continued practicing because we didn't get to some classwork yesterday. So I want them on a day-to-day basis to have an answer to what did you learn at school today.
And I think I would hope that students leave the building feeling like they've gotten something new in terms of content, but I also would hope that they leave feeling like they know that they connected with people, because I think that's honestly like why I was drawn to this job and why I like this job, is because it's based upon connection with people, and I think that for me is something that has always helped my own mental health and stress levels, is just being able to like connect with other people and have solid relationships. And I would, depends on the person who you are, but that's something that I would hope students leave with as well, feeling like they had a connection.
Feel that at the end of their day, they might feel a little flustered or frustrated with some lessons or an assignment they have, and that's just kind of wearing them out and making them anxious or making them a little like, I didn't get that. So I accept that's part of the human condition of growing and learning. There are going to be some things that you just don't get, and for some people it bothers them, for others like, that's the way it is. So I would expect perhaps, as part of the learning process, there'll be maybe even a little confusion for a student at the end of the day. I hope that is counterbalanced by a sense of accomplishment and a sense of purpose that I mentioned earlier. That a student feels, you know what, I got this.
So at the end of a typical day, I really hope students feel like they had some connection with the people around them, both their classmates and the adults around them. I would hate for somebody to really feel like in the 6.5+ hours that they're here, that they were alone and unconnected and unseen. That's something that is really important to me. I want people to feel safe and belonging here in this building. Again, I recognize that we're not always there, but that is something that is important on a daily basis.
That people feel like they learned, that they feel supported by their teachers, by their counselors, by us, any adult that they're working with.
I think typical school day, I want them to feel like they belong. I think that's a huge thing, that we open up a lot when we feel like that we're meant to be here, that we're valued, that we're bringing something into this space, for sure, and that's something that I try to do like every day. And I think at the end of this, I want them to feel like they're confident individuals who can go and kind of contribute to society and feel like they're able to find ways to be of service to other people and even themselves.
We want our students to be good communicators. We want them to be able to collaborate with others. We want them to be culturally and socially responsible. We want them to be empowered learners, meaning that they can take something and say, hey, I've got this. This is mine. I'm going to take this project, I'm going to take this test, I'm going to take this activity, I'm going to work with these students and run with it. And I'm going to make it my own. I'm going to create something unique and different out of it. So that empowerment piece is important to me. Not, yeah, I graduated, okay, now what's next for me? Tell me what else to do. I don't want students to graduate from Needham High School and have somebody to point them in the right direction. I want them to have some agency. I want them to feel empowered to say, this is where I'm going. And even if where you're going, you may go there and say, that's not what I want to do. My daughters, I've experienced that. This was great for a while, but I think now I'm going to pivot and do something else. To have the understanding and to have the skill set to recognize that it's time for me to move on and do something else, I want them to have that as well.
High school is a time to be, to be figuring yourself out, right? It's as a teenager, you have 1 foot in childhood and 1 foot in adulthood. And I think that's what makes it a precarious time in some ways, but it's also what makes it kind of cool, right? That you're still within the safety of home. You still have these a lot of freedom in terms of you're not worried about paying rent, hopefully, and things like that. But within that, you're gaining more adult responsibilities in terms of managing your own time and expectations, and hopefully there's lots of really cool experiences, whether it's a class or an extracurricular, that you look back on and you have the experiences that kind of enrich your life, along with the skills that are the things you might actually need to use. Does that make sense? So I would say definitely just, in terms of graduate skills and experiences.
And when you all walk out the doors at the end of the 4 years at graduation, I hope you feel ready for all of the varied challenges that you're going to have in life beyond the high school. I don't even know if we can anticipate what all of those challenges are, but I hope we've given you a broad enough skill set to be able to navigate them no matter what they are, whether they're academic in a college or continuing learning environment, whether they're in a work environment, whether they're in the military, whether in a relationship that you have with a loved one now or a future one. That's a whole range of skills that we're trying to get you prepared for and to be successful in all of those areas. So I hope students now, when they are past being in high school and they're looking back, they're feeling like, I was pretty well prepared for the various stuff life threw at me, because of my time in the Needham schools and Needham High School in particular.
You've heard from the administrators, teachers, counselors, and students. So I guess that just leaves me. My name is Aidan Ward. I've spent the last 12 years of my life listening to different teachers in different classrooms, in different schools, trying to learn everything that they tell me. I've been a student pretty much my entire life. If I've been able to show one thing, it should be that high school is a complicated place. There's a mountain of challenges working against teachers and students in creating a positive place to learn. That's why this is such an important conversation to have and why I made whatever this has become in the first place. We get so focused on the next thing that we have to do that we can forget about the bigger picture entirely. We get so focused on the next acronym that we have to study for that we forget the very thing that the people that I interviewed were trying to tell us. The homeworks and tests that seems like they will determine everything, in reality are just a homework or test. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take a stake in the work, but that a couple of C's or even F's don't define you, nor do they define your future. I want schools, this one in particular, to be somewhere where students don't feel so pressured to succeed, that they push themselves so far past their limits that they don't even know how to come back. I want teachers to be able to share their passions and love for their subjects with their students without having to fight against a curriculum. Although the majority of my time here is over, next year my sister will be here. And the next 4 years of her life will be centered around this place. And if I can make it any better for her and those after me, then I've succeeded. There's nothing else to tell you, and there's nothing else to show you. The only thing left to do is to take what these people have shared with you and use that when you're in this building. Because we all have to be here and spend more time than we may want to. So we might as well make it a place that we can all enjoy. That's it. I'm out. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. You know what I'd love to shoot next?